Now, hypertension is the biggest contributor of global burden of diseases. If you look at the 10 important killers worldwide, you can see the hypertension stands on the top with 9.4 million deaths. And the rest, can see whether it is tobacco, cancer, accidents, whatever. Hypertension alone claims almost 10 million people out of 17 million people dying of cardiovascular diseases. So such is the importance of hypertension globally. Next, please. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, next, now you're going in a different direction. Yeah. Now, look at Pakistan situation. The first authentic data that we got was way back in 1997, the result of National Health Survey of Pakistan conducted between 1990 to 1994, which told us that 18% of our population over the age of 15 years is suffering from high blood pressure. And that was the time that we founded Pakistan Hypertension League in June 1997. And we thought this is a very alarming figure, but the subsequent studies opened our eyes that this is just a tip of the iceberg, because the prevalence was reported much higher in the subsequent studies, which I'm going to share with you next. So we had a study conducted by Pakistan Hypertension League in 2016-17 nationwide, conducted through the support of some pharmaceutical industry. It was a national survey, and the results were alarming. Next, please. And look at the hypertension. In the main urban area, 53.7% people were suffering from hypertension, and the peripheral urban area was slightly higher than that. So very alarming figures. Almost 50% adults were suffering from hypertension. This was 30 years and above population. Again, this is the youngest population, which makes 60% of Pakistani population as a whole. So very alarming figures. And we thought that we may be exaggerating. This may be an exaggerated figure. But then we had some further support from studies that were conducted subsequently. Next. We had for the last 3-4 years, we are conducting a May Measurement Month, which is a World Hypertension Day month, as a full month for hypertension survey worldwide under the umbrella of ISH. And in 2017, we had a very big contribution in the form of 25,000 people that we were screened in Pakistan, and the results were published in European Heart Journal. Next, please. And that was supported our initial studies that 45% mean age. Males were 66% people were suffering from hypertension, females 33%. Of course, this is a not a representative figure, but again, you can see that the figure is somewhat very high. So next, again, we had some support from the diabetic friends. Next, please. Next slide. So according to National Diabetes Survey, previous please. Previous. According to the National Diabetes Survey of Pakistan, next. Can I do it from here? 46.2% people were suffering from hypertension, out of which 24.9 had self-reported hypertension and 21 were already diagnosed hypertensive. So we are talking in the range of 35 to 50% people suffering from hypertension in at least on our urban communities. Next, please. Now look at the diabetes, and the future predictions are that in year 2025, we will have even higher figures in the form of 1.56 billion people suffering from hypertension, out of which 70% will be in our part of the world. Next, please. Now, diabetes is another major challenge of our time, and it is affecting almost 16 million Americans every year. Next, please. So the prevalence according to WHO, year 2000, 17.1 million, 2030, 366 million. And the combination of diabetes and hypertension, 102 million now, and by the year 2030, it will be 220 million people. And Pakistan stands on the 4th in diabetic status. Next, please, as a country. Next. Next, please. So the diabetes in Pakistan reports vary from previous. Yes. So the IDF, next, please. IDF 9th edition of 2019 reports the prevalence of hypertension in diabetes in Pakistan around 17.1%, which is 148% higher than the previous figures. And according to this, there are 19 million diabetics in Pakistan at the moment. And this is going to grow. If you include the pre-diabetics, I think the figure will be somewhere in 40 million. Next, please. No, if you look at this slide, this is a very interesting slide and very informative because this tells you about hypertension. 1/3 people suffer from hypertension, 1/3 don't know the disease, 1/3 are on treatment but under control. So this is the rule of 1/3. So I think it's very interesting to important to know that hypertension is so common, but very little people, very few people are under adequate control. Next, please. And anybody whose blood pressure is 140 millimeter systolic and above and 90 millimeter diastolic and above is hypertensive irrespective of the age, gender or ethnicity. But for diabetics, we aim at 130/80, which is the optimal blood pressure. Next, please. So these are the guidelines that we follow at the moment in diagnosing hypertension. Next, please. These are the common thing between diabetes and hypertension is the risk factors. The risk factors are common in both the diseases. These are the non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors. Next, please. And as we all know, the underlying defect is insulin resistance, which is a common denominator in both hypertension, diabetes, and dyslipidemia and obesity. And this is the basic biochemical defect between these various metabolic diseases that exist. Next, please. And the main thrust of the disease on the blood vessels. It is the disease of the vessels because of involvement of the micro and macro vessels, we develop all sorts of complications that we come across in our clinical practice. Next, please. Next. So what happens is that because of the pressure on the vessels, there is vascular damage, there is endothelial dysfunction, and all these phenomena lead into atherosclerosis, ischemia, and end-stage cardiovascular disease, end-stage renal disease. So these two diseases combined together, they accelerate the process of atherosclerosis in these minor and major blood vessels. Next, please. What is the effect of these combination on arterial? Diabetes is a specific risk factor for small vessel disease. That's why you develop retinopathy, you develop nephropathy, much more common, and peripheral disease much more common than the hypertension alone. Hypertension is a specific risk factor for large vessel disease, and therefore it is a major risk factor for strokes. And together, the two culprits increase the risk of micro and macrovascular complications manifold. Next, please. And these are the vascular complications in the form of stroke, in the form of retinopathy, peripheral disease, kidney failure, left ventricular hypertrophy, coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, and so on. So this is the combination of hypertension and diabetes, which results in marked increase in these vascular complications. Next. How common is this deadly combination? Hypertension is twice as common in diabetes mellitus compared to non-diabetics. New onset diabetes is 2.5 times higher in hypertension. 20 to 40% of impaired glucose tolerance patients have hypertension. 40 to 50% of type 2 diabetes mellitus have hypertension, and only 1/4 of hypertension in diabetes is controlled. And therefore, the combination of diabetes and hypertension increases the cardiovascular risk by 3-fold. Next. Next, please. And this is again the partners in crime. On diagnosis, type 1 hypertension, diabetes mellitus, more than 25 to 40% have hypertension, and about 50% have microalbuminuria. In type 2 diabetes, more than 50% are already hypertensive, and more than 80% have microalbuminuria. So that is the effect of hypertension or diabetes. There is increased prevalence of hypertension, increased incidence of microalbuminuria. Next, please. Now, how the development takes place in hypertension and diabetes. Type 1 diabetes develops after several years of diabetes mellitus. Ultimately affects 30% of the patients and has 65 to 88% have microalbuminuria. And type 2 diabetes mostly present at diagnosis, ultimately affects at least 60% of patients, and 90% and above have got microalbuminuria. So hypertension diabetes accelerates the process of microalbuminuria, accelerates the process of end-stage renal disease and early nephropathy. Next. Next, please. In the interest of time, we are going to omit some slides. Next. Next, please. So this is, yes, what are the special features of hypertension in diabetes mellitus? This is very important to understand that diabetes mellitus and hypertension, when they exist together, there are certain special features. First of all, there is lack of nocturnal dipping in hypertensive patients seen in both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And this is very important. Loss of nocturnal dipping is very important because with this, the control of blood pressure, nocturnal blood pressure control becomes extremely difficult. The lack of nocturnal ditching is associated with increased risk of stroke and myocardial infarction. And this phenomena has been demonstrated very clearly after the Holter monitor came into existence and the 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitoring became a routine practice, that we are seeing a lot of people with loss of nocturnal dipping developing stroke early in the morning. Nighttime blood pressure control becomes especially important and difficult in diabetics who are also hypertensive. Blood pressure of diabetic patients is more sensitive to salt intake. This is very important because we are already very high salt intake nation, and diabetics who are hypertensive, they become more sensitive to salt intake even in the absence of nephropathy. Therefore, low salt diet is extremely important in diabetics compared to those who are not diabetics and hypertensive. Next. Now, the impact of therapeutics is also very important. There are certain antihypertensive medications which increase the new onset diabetes mellitus, which increase the severity of diabetes and make it difficult to control. And on the top stands the long-term use of beta blockers, especially non-selective, long-term use of beta blockers have shown to increase the number of new onset diabetics. And therefore, it's very important that while we are treating hypertensive who are also diabetic, we should choose the most appropriate medication. We should not increase the chances of diabetes or make it worse. And beta blockers should best be avoided in this respect. Next. Now, hypertensive people with type 2 diabetes mellitus, you can see that as the blood pressure level keeps on rising, the mortality keeps on rising. So the combination of hypertension and diabetes really becomes a very lethal combination, a very sinister alliance. And you can see that as the blood pressure levels keep on rising, there's increased mortality and morbidity. Next, please. Hypertension, diabetes, and nephropathy, because end-stage renal disease, one of the most common cause is diabetes and hypertension, and this is a very fatal complication, difficult to manage, very expensive, very cumbersome. High systolic blood pressure is a significant risk factor for microalbuminuria and progression of nephropathy. And therefore, it's very important that we should have very strict control. Isolated systolic hypertension is strongly related to development of micro and macro complications in diabetes mellitus. So when the hypertension is added on to diabetes mellitus, the complication rate goes very high, and therefore we need a very strict blood pressure and a very strict diabetic control with appropriate medication. And I think Professor Zaman Sheikh is going to discuss the medication at length. Therefore, I have not touched that subject. Next. So what is the end result? The end result is the underlying defect is insulin resistance, as we all know. And this is a very special feature of South Asian population. We have a combination of obesity, metabolic syndrome, hypertension associated, and diabetes. And the end result is, over here, it is twofold. And when the diabetes is added on, there's fourfold increase in all these complications: coronary disease, CKD, peripheral artery disease, cardiovascular disease, and all of these major complications become fourfold high when there's a combination of obesity, hypertension, and diabetes mellitus, which is a very common combination. So I think next time we should be doing a triple combination scenario rather than just two combinations. Next, please. Next. Just to tell you that even a small rise in blood pressure can be very dangerous, and therefore each millimeter of blood pressure, whether systolic or diastolic, matters. You can see that slight rise increases your chances of cardiovascular risk. You see, keeps on rising, and they are next. And likewise, if you drop your blood pressure even by a few millimeters, then you gain a lot of reduction in cardiovascular mortality. Next slide, please. This has shown how we can reduce the mortality and morbidity due to cardiovascular diseases by even small drop in blood pressure, whether 2 millimeter decrease in mean systolic blood pressure, which sounds very minuscule, but 61 prospective studies have shown that you save 7 to 10% of cardiovascular events. That's very rewarding. So I just thought I should allude to you that treatment is very rewarding. Next. And therefore, if you have a tight glucose and tight blood pressure control, you have a significant reduction in stroke, in any diabetic endpoints, death, or microvascular complications. So I think a very tight blood pressure control, a very tight glycemic control gives you a tremendous decline or decrease or reduction in all these major endpoints. Next, just. So the primary goal in diabetic hypertension patient is a decrease in the hemodynamic and glycemic burden is the primary goal in the management of hypertensive diabetic patients. And next, this is all the objective of this discussion. Next, please. Next, please. So just to conclude, my dear friends and dear participants, both hypertension and diabetes are common diseases, and the incidence is sharply rising globally, but more so in our South Asia region. Both diseases often coexist and have same risk factors. Together, the two diseases increase the risk of vascular complications manifold. Tight glycemic and blood pressure control, as per guidelines, can prevent fatal complications to a great extent. Lifestyle changes play an important role in reducing their burden in the community, and that's the role of the physicians and the various societies to promote lifestyle changes in the community. Next. With this, I would like to thank the organizers, in particular Professor Zaman Sheikh, the Novartis Pharmaceuticals, and my distinguished panelists who have agreed to share this moment with us. Thank you very much once again, and walaikum salam.
Thank you very much, sir, for an excellent and informative lecture. Now let me invite our second very renowned speaker and famous. He is FCPS, MRCP UK, FRCP, and MSc in Endocrinology and Diabetes from University of Glasgow. He is pioneer of 2-year MSc program in Diabetes and Endocrinology at 3 places: Dow University of Health Sciences, Karachi, Liaquat University, Jamshoro, as well as College of Family Medicine in Pakistan. At present, he is working as Professor of Medicine at Sir Syed College of Medical Sciences, Karachi. He is observer of IDF General Council and the founder member of Diabetes in Asia Study Group and Middle East North Africa IDF region. He is chair of National Diabetic Chapter in Pakistan Society of Internal Medicine. He is president of Health Times Academy. I am talking about Professor Mohammad Zaman Sheikh. Sir will highlight on the management of hypertension in diabetes mellitus. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Farnaz, for your kind words. Okay, with the name of Allah, we begin. My topic today is overview of hypertension and well-surrounded family in the management of hypertension, especially in relation with diabetes mellitus. Before going further, I am grateful to my co-speaker, Professor Mohammad Ishaq, for his excellent talk. He made my job easy because he mentioned 1 or 2 slides on therapy of these patients. I'm grateful to our 3 great panelists, Professor Abdul Basit, Professor Saeed Maher, and Dr. Khalid Khalil. And I'm also thankful to moderator of today, Dr. Farnaz from Du University, for her nice moderation. And I'm also grateful to Novartis Pharmaceutical Company who provided this platform for this academic activity. Especially coordinator Mr. Naveed Rahman, Nadeem Rahman, Mr. Masood Ahmad Khan, and Dr. Javed. I'm grateful to all of you. So this is another program is the chair of National Diabetic chapter of Pakistan Society of Internal Medicine. So with this brief introduction, let us move forward. This is disclaimer. So diabetes and hypertension, as Professor Mohammad Ishaq said, it is a sinister alliance. Here we see they are partners in crime. If there is hypertension, then 2.4 times more risk of diabetes. If there is diabetes, there are 2 times more risk of hypertension. So often they go together, and root causes metabolic syndrome. So now, before going further in detailed combined therapy, let us talk this very old gold study, MARVEL study. It shows the benefit of ARB, valsartan, in diabetic patient with or without hypertension, but with microalbuminuria. So microalbuminuria reduction with valsartan in patients with type 2 diabetes. 322 patients were enrolled with the type 2 diabetes and microalbuminuria, but with or without hypertension. Now this is important. The result was more patients reversed to normoglycemia from microalbuminuria with valsartan, 29.9% versus amlodipine, only 14%. Now here I have mentioned it is BP independent effect. This is very important. In diabetes, we talk about glucose independent, glucose dependent. Now, these words are very important. In diabetes, we use this word glucose dependent or independent with incretin, because incretin, if there is hyperglycemia, only then it works powerfully. If blood sugar becomes normal, then same dose of incretin with the GLP-1 receptor agonist or DPP-4 inhibitor, peptidase 4 inhibitor, their same dose will become less potent when there is normoglycemia. So this is the reason that GLP-1 receptor agonist, most of the time, it is also used in obesity, like liraglutide, even without diabetes. So this is beauty of these drugs. And similarly, this drug also proved that if there is no hypertension, microalbuminuria in diabetic patient, even then it works. There will be no hypertension, but certainly microalbuminuria will be reversed back, can be reversed back. This is one Korean study by Hai-Jin Kim. It shows that oxidative stress is reduced by using these combination, 2 drugs, valsartan and amlodipine. Now we know that diabetes and hypertension both are situations where there is oxidative stress, and this causes actual damage at basic level. Now these drugs reduced nitrotyrosine, which is the marker of oxidative stress in type 2 diabetic patient with hypertension. In this Korean study, which was performed in 2017. Now other sentence is also very important. It says that other parameters like glucose. Slide number 6A, hypertension and partner in crime. This I already mentioned. There's close correlation. Okay, MARVEL study I mentioned. Can you see this slide, MARVEL study 7?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Please give me feedback if you cannot see. So MARVEL study. Now, diabetes and hypertension, these are situations of oxidative stress. And this Korean study by Hai-Jin Kim in 2017 proved that there is reduced level of nitrotyrosine, marker of oxidative stress, because hypertension both are already states of oxidative. Those drugs which reduce the oxidative, they are more beneficial. Now, second para is equally important. That in this study, other parameters like glucose, lipid profile, albumin-creatinine ratio, and HUMA. HUMA stands for homeostasis model assessment of insulin resistance, showed no significant difference before after treatment in either group. This means these drugs, they are quite safe in diabetes as well. 50-year-old male employed smoker, known case of diabetes for the first 7 years and hypertensive for last 5 years. His sugar is controlled on vildagliptin, metformin, and small dose of glimepiride 1 milligram in 24 hours. However, BP control has deteriorated over past 6 months. Physician up-titrated monotherapy and then switched to double therapy. He noticed ankle swelling after up-titration of these two drugs. BP goal is still not achieved, 160/90. Drug history, as I mentioned, valsartan initially 80 milligram up-titrated to 160 milligram, amlodipine from 5 milligram up-titrated to 10 milligram. Family history of hypertension was there. Other concomitant complications. Drug history, valsartan initially 80 milligram up-titrated to 160 milligram, amlodipine 5 milligram, maximum 10 milligram. Family history of hypertension was there. Other complication was not seen in this patient. Now discussion, what to do next in this patient? There are 5 options. Switch over to another dual combination with different drugs, means stop valsartan and Novartis, amlodipine. Add another molecule in these two drugs and move to triple combination. This is second option. Third option is intensify lifestyle modification further, like we saw in diabetes prevention program. Restrict salt to less than 2 grams because we know that salt and hypertension, they go together. In DASH study, we reduce salt intake from 10 gram to 6 gram per day, and 6 millimeter mercury reduction in systolic BP was noted. So restrict salt to 2 gram in this patient. Is it option? Reduce 7% of body weight. Again, this figure was taken from diabetes prevention program, 7% body weight. So what out of 5? In live session, I could have asked this direct, but now I am going forward and see what is the correct answer. So let us look at the evidence. First study, X-FAST study. X-FAST study means X-Forge and failure after single therapy study overview. Objective to evaluate efficacy of amlodipine plus valsartan in patients with hypertension, non-responding adequately to monotherapy for past 2 months. Patient number more than 800, rather close to 900. Study design 16-week randomized controlled double-blind multinational parallel group study. Primary endpoint was proportion of patients who achieved BP goal at 16 weeks. So this was the objective. And treatment offered was amlodipine valsartan up to maximum 10/160. If BP is not controlled means 140/90 non-diabetic and 130/80 in diabetic. Then 12.5 milligram of hydrochlorothiazide was added at week 18. Total study was 16 weeks. Now this was added at 8 weeks if BP was not controlled. 72% of patients receiving low-dose amlodipine valsartan 5/160 versus 74.8% receiving high-dose 10.60 achieved BP control at week 16. Antihypertensive efficacy of amlodipine valsartan at each dose means 5 and 10 versus plus 160 was well maintained regardless of diabetes status. So it is safe. BMI, whatever the BMI, male or female, race and age. More adverse effects were reported in amlodipine valsartan high dose group 10/160, 56%. Versus low dose 42%. Peripheral edema was most frequent adverse effect with this high dose, which elevated when TZD was added. So this is beauty of combination of 3 drugs. They decrease the side effects of the other drugs. Percentage of patients reaching BP goal less than 40 milligram with amlodipine valsartan according to diabetes status. Now these are all patients. These are diabetic patients. These are non-diabetic patients. And here cutoff point is 140/90. You see more patient achieved goal in diabetes patient. And this is high dose. In this also you see higher number of patients, the diabetic group, they achieve the goal. And 47% of diabetic patients reached less than 130/80. Now, this criteria was 140/80. Here it is 130/80, which is cutoff point for diabetic patient at week 8, not week 16. So then thiazide was added in this group to achieve the goal, and they achieved. Now, second study is a meta-analysis. I'm go brief for each study. This meta-analysis was done on 11 studies, more than 7,000 patients. Now, the benefits of triple combination therapy. Triple combination of valsartan, amlodipine, and hydrochlorothiazide. Now, this is triple combination. It was studies with versus these drugs. This is double combination. Now, double combination may be ARB with calcium channel blocker, ARB with diuretic, calcium channel blocker with diuretic, and all combined. At each level, you see p-value is significant when we use this regimen, triple therapy, versus different type of double therapy. Conclusion, I presume you are seeing my slides, Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Conclusion, ARB and calcium channel blocker and hydrochlorothiazide 3-in-1 significantly reduced BP more than all dual components which I mentioned. BP difference was significant, 5.8 systolic versus 3.5 diastolic, and p-value was very significant. Now, third and last study, it is a real world study. Now, what is real world? Now, there is tendency for doing a study in the clinic setup. It is not artificial environment, double blind, placebo control type of study, which is more expensive. It is an artificial environment. Now, doctor sit in clinic and he is doing a study same time. It's known as real world data. Now, surprisingly, the result of real world data is very close to those very well-controlled, double-blind, placebo-controlled, those type of studies. Results same. So, and they are much cheaper, and they are more natural, because patients see in clinic environment, not in artificial environment. So this is real-world data from one study, and there are 2 slides from this study. BP goals and response achieved in diabetic and non-diabetic patient. Now, these are diabetic patient, these are non-diabetic patient. And you see same efficacy. Systolic BP, diastolic BP, systolic, diastolic, and diabetic, non-diabetic, same efficacy. And here, side effects. Amlodipine, valsartan, hydrochlorothiazide was well tolerated and observational. They are known as observational study. And they may be prospective. They are not retrospective. Okay, so these are 2 drugs. These are 3 drugs. When we use amlodipine and valsartan, then severe adverse effects are 49. And when we added hydrochlorothiazide, only 1. Total adverse effect 963 versus 73. Peripheral edema in 99 patients, which is only 9% due to addition of thiazide, low-dose thiazide. Headache, 87% versus 2%, because both these drugs, especially amlodipine, it causes headache. Cough, 52 versus 3. Nausea, 42 versus 2. So great benefit when we combine these drugs. So my last 2 slides, summary. Many patients with hypertension have a complex form of the disease. It is complex form, not a simple scenario, wherein hypertension is hard to treat. Many clinical trials and observational studies have demonstrated that simplified treatment regimen, wherein single dose combination or 2 or even 3 agents, 3-in-1 and 1 tablet 3 agents are used, both improve the compliance, adherence. Compliance is a big problem. You may think that these drugs are not working. Then when you take detailed history, you come to know that actually the patient is not taking the drugs properly because of many reasons. Maybe because of cost, maybe because of big size of the tablet, maybe because of severe nausea, vomiting after taking tablet, whatever the reason. So please ask patient about the compliance. If there is single tablet, 3-in-1, 24 hours a day, only single tablet, obviously compliance will be best. Both improve adherence and do a significantly better job for reducing BP than do individual doses of same. medication. And this is my last slide. Summary. Again, carefully chosen triple therapy as a single tablet is effective in achieving target goals in hypertensive diabetic patients. It is not only safe, but minimize effects of each other. This is the beauty of this combination, and thank you very much.